days of Asháninka, Apprentice. You're allowed to fall asleep. The story won't be offended. If you'd like more, you can subscribe. Chapter 1. The House That Breathes. You are a young woman who sleeps close to the fire because there is nowhere else left for you. The Maloka exhales before dawn. It does this every morning, as if the night has been held too long inside it. Smoke loosens from the hearths. Hammocks creak. Someone coughs carefully into their hand. The house breathes, and you wake with it, already aware of the heat on your calves and the ache in your shoulders from sleeping curled too tight. Your hammock hangs where your mother's once did. No one moved it. No one said anything about it afterward. The space remained useful, and that was enough. You slide down and stir the coals with a stick. The fire wakes reluctantly. Your breath fogs for a moment and then disappears into the warm dark. Outside, insects are already arguing. The sound never stops, but it changes shape at this hour, becoming thinner, sharper, as if the forest itself is waking up with a complaint. You add cassava to the pot and try not to think about the dream. Dreams are not neutral things. Everyone knows this. They carry weight. Some carry instructions. Some carry blame. Yours have been arriving too clearly, with edges that do not soften in the morning. You have learned not to speak of them unless asked. Silence is a form of respect. As the sky lightens through the smoke hole, the Maloka fills with small movements. Women rise and stretch. Children roll out of hammocks and immediately begin being corrected. Someone knocks over a calabash and freezes, waiting to see if the sound matters. It does not. Not today. The rules about fear are extensive and inconsistent. You are allowed to fear snakes, but not shadows. You are allowed to fear jaguars, but only after sunset. You are not allowed to fear the river, unless someone has already drowned. You follow these rules carefully, though they do not always help. You step outside with the pot and feel the damp ground under your feet. Mist clings to the clearing. The trees stand close, as they always do, watching without interest. Somewhere upriver, a bird calls with a voice like wood breaking. You work beside the others in the garden later, pulling weeds, checking leaves for signs of rot. The soil is warm and soft. Manioc grows whether you believe in it or not. You like this about it. Your hands move automatically. Your thoughts do not. Someone mentions the child who fell sick in the night. Fever, shallow breathing. The elders have already spoken. It must be a mistake in burial practice, or an animal eaten too soon after bleeding, or a name spoken aloud when it should not have been. No one looks at you. That is also something you have learned to notice. The shaman's house sits slightly apart, as if the forest made a small allowance for him. You see him once, passing between trees, his back bent, his steps deliberate. He does not look toward you. You feel this as attention anyway. By midday, the heat presses low and constant. Sweat dries slowly. Your mouth tastes bitter. Hunger sharpens the edges of things. You remember the dream again despite yourself. In it you were inside the Maloka, but the space had stretched, becoming longer than it should be. A jaguar moved between the fires, its shoulders brushing hammocks without touching them. No one else saw it. You tried to shout, but your voice stayed in your chest. When it turned to look at you, its eyes reflected firelight and something else, something colder. You woke before it reached you. You do not fear jaguars in the day. At night is another matter. Darkness has always troubled you. You learned early to hide this. The jungle does not care for weakness, and neither do people. You tell yourself that everyone fears the dark. They are simply better at naming other things instead. In the afternoon you are sent to fetch water. You go alone, which is allowed. The path is familiar. Roots cross it like old scars. You walk carefully, listening. The river moves steadily, unconcerned. On the bank you pause. For a moment you have the sensation of being watched, not by something hidden, but by the space itself. The feeling passes. You fill the gourds. When you return, the shaman is waiting near the Maloka. This is unusual. He rarely waits for anyone. He asks you what you dreamed. You consider lying. This takes very little time. You decide not to. As you speak, his face does not change. He listens as if you are listing items, not describing a warning. When you finish, he nods once. You are being noticed, he says. He does not say by what. He tells you to come after nightfall, alone, quietly. He does not explain why. Explanation is not his habit. When night comes, the Maloka settles into its layered breathing. Fires dim. Stories thin out and stop. You lie in your hammock and wait until the dark feels deep enough to move through without drawing attention. Outside, the forest is dense and immediate. Darkness presses from all sides. You move by memory more than sight, counting steps, feeling the ground. Fear rises in you like heat, familiar and unwelcome. You do not run. The shaman's hut smells of smoke and something sharp, almost sweet. He has prepared a small bowl. Inside it is a thick paste, dark and glossy. He tells you to sit. This opens, he says, touching his chest, then his head, then the space between. You swallow the paste. It tastes bitter and metallic. Almost immediately your stomach tightens. Your mouth fills with saliva. Heat blooms behind your eyes. Your breath shortens, becomes shallow and deliberate. Your heart slows, then seems to skip. then settles into a heavy rhythm that you can feel in your throat. You want to vomit. You do not. Your limbs grow heavy as if the air has thickened around them. Sweat breaks out along your spine. The firelight bends. Shadows deepen. Do not fight, the shaman says. Do not follow. The floor seems to tilt. The sound of insects swells and then drops away. Your breath becomes something you have to remember to do. Fear flares, not sharp but wide, like the dark itself. Then something shifts. Your sight changes. The hut fades. The dark opens, not as absence but as texture. You see without light, and the seeing terrifies you. Shapes move at the edge of awareness. You feel low to the ground, alert, coiled. It is natural. It is unbearable. The shaman's voice reaches you, distant and steady. He tells you to hold the shape, to listen without naming, to feel the roots beneath the floor, the insects in the walls, the slow patience of wood. You do not understand how, but you do. Fear does not leave. It simply stops being a problem. When the world returns, you are shaking. Your stomach cramps. Your breath comes in shallow pulls. The shaman watches you with something like approval. You will learn, he says, to go there and come back. Outside, the forest continues as it always has, indifferent and waiting. Chapter 2. What is not neutral? You wake before dawn with the taste still in your mouth. It is faint now, a memory more than a sensation, but it lingers stubbornly at the back of your tongue, as if your body has decided to keep a record, even when your thoughts would rather not. Your stomach feels hollowed out, not empty, shaped, as though something passed through it and left an outline behind. The maloka breathes around you. Someone shifts in sleep. A child murmurs and is hushed without waking. The fire closest to you has burned down to a red eye, watching. You lie still and wait for the fear to arrive. It does, eventually, but it comes late and without enthusiasm, as if it has been delayed by other duties. It settles in your chest, familiar and almost disappointing. You have felt worse. This thought surprises you, and you let it pass without examining it too closely. When you stand, your legs feel steadier than you expect. Your head is clear in a way that feels temporary, like a gift that might be taken back if you draw attention to it. You move quietly, careful not to wake anyone, and step outside. The forest is dim and grey, the hour when shapes exist without agreeing to be named. You dislike this light. Darkness at least commits to itself. This half-seeing has always unsettled you more. You fetch water. You return. You tend the fire. the morning proceeds. Later, when the others wake fully, the news spreads. The sick child did not improve. The fever worsened. Breathing slowed. The elders gathered early, which is never a good sign. Early gatherings mean urgency dressed up as calm. By the time you join the women near the gardens, the cause has already been identified twice and dismissed once. Someone buried fish bones too close to the river. Someone stepped over a sleeping child. Someone failed to observe the proper interval between mourning and meat. The rules about intervals are extensive. They are also flexible, depending on who is being corrected. You listen and work. You keep your hands busy. You notice that no one asks what you dreamed. By mid-morning, the shaman has been summoned openly. This is different. When he is called in daylight, it means the elders want certainty, not guidance. You watch from a distance as he approaches the child's family. He does not hurry. He never hurries. The heat builds. Insects gather. Time thickens. When the shaman emerges, he says very little. He touches the child's chest. He listens. He asks what the child ate, what names were spoken nearby, who had quarreled recently. The questions are precise and the answers unsatisfying. He says the spirits are close. This satisfies everyone immediately. The elders begin adjusting behavior. Fires are moved. Children are kept nearer. Certain foods are set aside. Fear organizes itself into tasks, which is how it prefers to operate. You feel the words land differently in you, not heavier, clearer. You remember the way the shaman told you not to fight and not to follow. You remember how fear did not leave, but changed its shape. That afternoon he finds you without appearing to look. He does not ask about last night. He asks if you ate. You say yes. This is not entirely true. He nods anyway. He gives you something wrapped in leaves. Inside is a small bundle of seeds, crushed and dried. Their smell sharp and green even through the binding. He tells you not to touch them yet. These are not for seeing, he says. They are for learning to stay. You want to ask what this means. You do not. Instead, you ask whether the spirits are angry. He considers this longer than you expect. They are attentive, he says finally. This distinction feels important, though you do not yet know why. That night, you do not sleep easily. The Maloka is darker than usual. Clouds have covered the stars. The forest presses close. You lie awake, listening to the layered sounds. Your fear of the dark rising and falling in familiar waves. At some point you become aware of movement, not outside, but inside yourself. Your breath slows without your intending it to. Your heart settles into a rhythm you recognize from the night before. You are not under the influence of anything, and yet the body remembers. This alarms you more than the vision did. In the early hours, someone cries out, a sharp sound quickly stifled. Word spreads even faster in the dark. The child has worsened. By morning, the elders are no longer pretending this is ordinary. They speak of distant causes, of sacred ground disturbed, of stories from upriver, a place where outsiders walked where they should not have, and were taken. Eaten, some say, not as hunger, but as correction. Cannibals are spoken of rarely, and only when fear has already decided what shape it will take. You listen. You notice how the story grows more certain with each telling, even as details shift. You notice how the spirits are described as traveling, offended, carrying consequence like smoke. The shaman listens too. His face remains unchanged. Later, alone with you, he prepares another bowl. This time the substance is thinner, brewed from vine and leaf, its surface shimmering slightly in the firelight. He tells you to drink slowly. As it settles in you, the sensations arrive in stages. Heat blooms in your chest and spreads outward. Your stomach tightens, then loosens. Your mouth dries. Your breath becomes deliberate again. Each inhale something you choose, rather than something that happens. Your heart slows. The slowing frightens you. You feel the fear rise and do nothing to stop it. You retch once, dry and sharp. He does not react. Your limbs feel distant. Your skin tingles, then goes numb in patches. Sound stretches. The fire seems very far away. Hold, he says. You do. You hold the shape that forms, low, alert, seeing without light. This time, when the night opens, you recognize it. Recognition does not lessen the terror, but it makes it usable. You feel the ground beneath you, not as surface, but as depth. Roots press against your awareness. Something small and quick moves near your feet. You feel it before you see it. A snake slides past untroubled. For a moment you feel its movement as if it were your own. The sensation is brief and overwhelming. You almost lose yourself in it. The shaman's hand closes around your wrist. Firm. Real. Stay, he says. When you return fully, you are exhausted. Your body shakes. Your mouth tastes like earth and bile. Your fear lingers, but it no longer demands explanation. The spirits do not punish without reason, the shaman says. They respond. You think of the distant story, the violated ground, the eaten men. You think of fear moving through people like a current. You want to ask whether the spirits know the difference between guilt and proximity. You do not. Outside, the forest listens, as it always has. Chapter 3. What you are not supposed to ask. You are careful the next day to behave as expected. This means rising when others rise, working when others work, speaking only when addressed, and keeping your face arranged in the neutral shape that invites neither concern nor inquiry. It is a skill learned early, and it serves you well now. No one remarks on your paleness or the way your hands tremble briefly when you lift heavy things. Fatigue is common. Silence is safer. The body recovers unevenly. Your head clears before your stomach settles. Your breath remains shallow longer than you would like, as if it has learned something new and is reluctant to return to its old habits. When you bend, heat rises too quickly. When you stand, your heart lags behind the movement, then catches up with a heavy thud that you feel in your teeth. You do not mention this to anyone. The child dies before midday. There is no single moment when this becomes true. The breathing simply slows beyond recovery. The small body becomes still in a way that cannot be mistaken. Grief follows the rules closely at first. Women cry, men stand apart, names are avoided, objects are moved. The elders do not argue. Agreement arrives too quickly for that. This, too, is a sign. The shaman is sent for again, though he is already present. He watches the preparation of the body with careful attention, as if looking for a flaw in the process rather than the cause. He says nothing that can be disagreed with. He says nothing that can be acted on directly. Later, when the child is gone from the Maloka, and the air has rearranged itself around the absence, the elders speak of the story upriver again. They say the ground there was sacred before anyone remembered why. They say strangers came and did not ask. They say the people of that place ate them so the offense would not remain loose in the world. Eating as containment, violence as tidying. The story feels too complete. You notice this and do not comment on it. Fear begins to organize itself more aggressively. Fires are moved again. A period of abstention is declared and then revised. Someone argues briefly about whether fear itself counts as impurity. This question is left unresolved, which allows everyone to continue as they were. You are aware, suddenly, of how much of village life depends on things remaining unresolved. The shaman calls you to him that night without ceremony. He does not prepare anything for you to drink. This surprises you more than it should. You felt it without help, he says. You know what he means. You nod. This is not a gift, he continues. It is a condition. You wait. Waiting has become easier. Some bodies open more easily, he says. Some close when frightened. Yours does neither. You think of the dark. You think of how fear does not make you flee, but does not release you either. You stay. He studies you, and for the first time you sense calculation rather than assessment. The difference is subtle, but it sits badly with you. You will learn when to enter, he says, and when not to. This feels incomplete. You do not ask why. Instead, he gives you a task. You are to sit alone at the edge of the clearing after nightfall. No fire, no preparation. You are not to consume anything. You are not to leave. This is not a test, he says, which tells you that it is. You do not tell anyone where you are going. This is part of the instruction, though he does not say it aloud. When night comes, the forest closes in, as it always does. The darkness is thick and immediate, pressing against your eyes. Without fire, the clearing feels smaller, not larger. You sit with your back against a tree and focus on breathing, which immediately becomes difficult. Your heart speeds, then slows. Your breath shallows. Your stomach tightens. You recognize the pattern now, which does not make it easier. The sounds of the jungle swell and recede. Something moves nearby. You do not look. Looking feels like a decision you cannot afford to make. Time stretches. Your fear rises and settles, and rises again. You think of the animal sight the night before, the way seeing without light felt both natural and unbearable. You do not know how to reach that state without help. This knowledge both comforts and frightens you. At some point, you become aware of movement beneath the ground. Not imagined, perceived. Roots shift as moisture moves through them. Insects pass. Something small and warm pauses near your foot. You hold still. Holding still has become a kind of skill. When you return to the Maloka before dawn, no one remarks on your absence. This is not kindness. It is practice. The shaman meets you later as if by accident. You did not follow, he says. You nod. You did not flee. You nod again. This is sufficient. There is no praise in his voice. There is no reassurance. The absence of both settles into you heavily. Over the next days, the training continues in fragments. Sometimes he gives you something to consume, crushed seeds that bring heat and nausea, thin brews that slow your breath and stretch time until it feels like a surface you could rest on. Other times he gives you nothing at all and asks you to endure the same states through hunger and stillness. Your body learns quickly. Your mind resists longer. Under the influence, you begin to feel the forest differently. Not as a place around you, but as a set of movements you are temporarily aligned with. Animals pass closer without alarm. Snakes do not avoid you. Once, a tangle of roots seems to shift aside as you step, though you do not know whether this is something you have done or something you have noticed too late. You do not ask. The spirits, when they appear, are not consistent. Sometimes they are shapes, sometimes they are sensations, sometimes they are nothing more than pressure, a sense of being addressed without words. The shaman does not explain which deserve fear and which deserve listening. This omission grows heavier with time. One afternoon, you hear distant shouting from the river. Men return with news of strange marks on the bank. Boot prints, they say, though the word is not precise. Something shaped by something else, something not made by foot or claw. The elders react immediately. Fires are extinguished. Children are gathered. Fear snaps into place like a tool taken from storage. The shaman says nothing. Later, alone with you, he prepares a small scraping from the skin of a brightly colored frog, dried and potent. He applies it carefully, in a ritualized manner that leaves no room for error. The effects are swift and brutal. Your heart slows until you fear it might stop. Heat surges through you. Your vision narrows. You retch violently. Your limbs tremble. Hold, he says again. In the altered state, the forest opened sharply. You see as an animal might, every movement luminous and immediate. The darkness does not disappear. It becomes something else entirely. You are terrified. You are also exactly where you belong. When the state passes, you are emptied out, shaking, unable to speak. The boundary must be kept, the shaman says softly. Sometimes it is a person. You do not yet understand what this means. You do not ask. Outside, the forest remains dense and watchful. Somewhere beyond it, something has been disturbed. You feel this not as knowledge, but as pressure, already moving closer. Chapter 4. The first shape held. The days after the frog medicine pass without clear edges. You notice this only because you begin to look for them. Morning and evening blur. Hunger arrives earlier than expected and leaves later than it should. Your body feels rearranged, not harmed, as if something has been shifted slightly out of alignment and left there on purpose. You are careful not to draw attention to this. Carefulness has become habitual. It requires less effort than fear now. The elders declare a period of restraint. Certain foods are set aside. Certain paths are avoided. The rules are announced, revised, announced again. No one asks whether this is helping. The point is not help. The point is obedience. You move through the village, performing your tasks with deliberate normality. You peel roots. You rinse gourds. You listen. People speak around you rather than to you, which suits you well enough. The dark circles beneath your eyes go unremarked. Fatigue is not suspicious. Withdrawal is. At night the shaman calls you again. This time the preparation is longer. He has you sit while he arranges objects precisely. Leaves aligned, bowl centered, fire adjusted until the smoke rises straight. The order of these things matters to him more than the objects themselves. You understand this now. He gives you a paste made from crushed seeds and ash, mixed with saliva until it binds. He instructs you to hold it beneath your tongue, not to swallow until told. As it dissolves, your mouth numbs. Saliva thickens. A spreading warmth moves from your jaw into your neck and chest. Your breath shortens. Your heart begins to slow, each beat heavy and deliberate, as if counted by someone else. When he tells you to swallow, your stomach clenches immediately. Heat floods your limbs. Your skin prickles. You feel suddenly, urgently aware of the space your body occupies, and then just as suddenly uncertain of it. You want to lie down. He does not allow this. Sit, he says. Your vision dims at the edges. The fire pulls apart into layers of color. Sound stretches, thins. Your breath becomes shallow enough that you have to remind yourself to draw it in. Fear rises. This is familiar now. It is no longer surprising. You let it rise without answering it. Hold the shape, the shaman says. At first there is nothing to hold, just sensation, pressure, heat, nausea that curls and uncurls without resolving. Your heart slows further. You wonder briefly whether it can slow too much. This thought passes without panic, which is new. Then the shift comes. It is not sudden. It is more like realizing you have been leaning forward for a long time and only just noticing the strain. Your perception tilts. The hut recedes. The dark does not close in this time. It opens outward. You see without light again. The fear arrives immediately, sharp and absolute. You feel exposed, visible in a way you have never been. Every movement around you registers. The smallest insect, the tremor of leaves, the slow curl of roots beneath packed earth. Your instinct is to recoil. You do not. You remember the shaman's hand on your wrist before. You remember the word, hold. You stay. The shape that forms is not fully an animal. It is closer to a way of moving through awareness. Low, attentive, oriented forward. You feel the ground as something solid and communicative, not separate from you. A lizard moves across the wall. You feel its movement as a ripple, a shift in the pattern you are part of. You do not follow it, you let it pass. The dark terrifies you. It also makes sense. This contradiction does not resolve itself. It does not need to. When the shaman speaks, his voice reaches you from a great distance. It is steady, anchoring. Do not push, he says. Do not retreat. You realize with a strange clarity that this is how you have lived much of your life already. The state fades gradually. Sensation returns in layers. Heat recedes. Your stomach tightens again, then settles. Your breath deepens reluctantly, as if it resents being asked to do so much work again. When you are fully present, your limbs shake with exhaustion. Sweat cools on your skin. Your mouth tastes of ash and bile. The shaman watches you without expression. You held, he says. This is not praise. It is confirmation. He does not give you water immediately. This irritates you briefly. Then the irritation passes. You note this with mild interest. Over the next days, the training becomes more deliberate. Sometimes he gives you substances, thin brews from vine and leaf that stretch time and soften edges, crushed seeds that bring nausea and heat, frog preparations that leave you trembling and emptied. Sometimes he gives you nothing at all and asks you to reach the same threshold through hunger, stillness, or fear. The effects vary, but the pattern remains. Breath shallows, heart slows, heat rises, nausea threatens, perception shifts. You begin to recognize the moment before the shift occurs. A narrowing, a tightening, a sense of standing at the edge of something that is neither inside nor outside you. Learning to stay there without falling forward or back becomes the work. Under these states, the forest responds differently to you. Animals pass closer. Birds pause longer. Once, when you move through a tangle of roots at night, they seem to part slightly beneath your feet. Or perhaps you simply step where they already intend to move. The distinction feels unimportant in the moment. The dark remains difficult. This surprises the shaman when you admit it. You fear what you see, he says. You shake your head. Words come slowly. I fear not seeing. He considers this. Then you must learn to see in other ways, he says, as if this resolves the matter. Fear continues to be used as a tool. He sends you to sit alone again. He withholds food. He speaks of consequences without specifying them. You comply. Compliance has become easier than resistance. At the same time, the village tightens further. More stories circulate about the upriver place, about the ground that was violated, about the outsiders who were taken and eaten so the offense would not wander. The elders speak as if this violence has weight, as if it can move through the forest like smoke. You listen and begin to suspect that what frightens them most is not the act itself, but the idea that fear can travel. One night, under the influence of a vine brew, you sense something distant, not a spirit as such, but a disturbance, a pressure that does not belong to your immediate surroundings. It feels old and unsettled, like a wound that has not closed. You mention this to the shaman afterward. He does not ask where you felt it. He asks how you responded. I stayed, you say. He nods. Good. Later, when you are alone, you realize that he has not asked what you saw. This omission sits with you. Still, you return when he calls. You drink what he prepares. You endure what he withholds. You learn to enter and leave the altered states with increasing control. The dark remains terrifying, and yet each time you slip into the animal way of seeing, each time the forest opens and accepts you without comment, you feel a quiet rightness settle beneath the fear. It is not comfort. It is alignment. Outside the Maloka, beyond the clearing, something continues to move closer. You feel it now not as dread, but as a slow pressure against the boundary you are learning, piece by piece, to hold. Chapter 5. The Weight That Teaches. By the time the elders announce another restriction, you have learned to predict it. The pattern is familiar now. A sign is noticed. A story is remembered. Fear rearranges itself into instruction. The announcement is made with solemn care, and then quietly amended over the next 2 days as practicality intrudes. You observe this without comment, which is increasingly expected of you. Hunger becomes a constant presence, not the sharp kind that demands attention, but a steady pressure that flattens sensation and sharpens thought in uncomfortable ways. You notice how quickly irritation rises now, and how quickly it fades when left alone. The body, deprived long enough, stops asking permission. The shaman uses this. He gives you nothing for 2 days, and then asks you to sit with him in the afternoon heat. The air is thick and unmoving. Sweat pools and does not evaporate. Insects gather without apology. Do not move, he says, which is unnecessary. You have already decided not to. As the hours stretch, your breath changes on its own. It slows, then becomes uneven. Your heart follows, lagging behind sensation, then catching up in heavy beats that you feel in your ears. Heat builds behind your eyes. Your stomach tightens and loosens in waves. Fear arrives late, as it often does now, confused by the absence of spectacle. You let it sit. When the shaman finally speaks again, his voice feels intrusive. "What do you feel?" he asks. You consider the question carefully. "Pressure," you say, as if something is waiting. He nods. "Good. Do not name it." Naming has consequences. You understand this more clearly than before. That night, he prepares a different substance. The smell alone makes your stomach lurch. Bitter, green, sharp, with something that reminds you of crushed leaves and rot. He tells you it will be unpleasant. This is not a warning. It is instruction. You drink. The liquid is thin and acrid. It burns slightly as it goes down. Almost immediately your body reacts. Heat floods your chest. Your breath shortens sharply. Your heart slows with alarming suddenness, each beat dragging itself forward. You gag, retch, bring up nothing. Sweat breaks out everywhere at once. Your limbs feel distant, as if attached by memory rather than nerve. "Stay," the shaman says. The fear this time is physical before it is anything else. Your body does not feel reliable. The slowing of your heart frightens you more than any vision has. You focus on breathing, shallow and deliberate. Each inhale a conscious act. The shift comes not as opening, but as sinking. Perception narrows, then deepens. The hut dissolves. The dark does not arrive as absence, but as density. You feel low to the ground again, not in posture, but in orientation. Your awareness presses outward rather than upward. The forest answers. You feel roots beneath you, not as objects, but as tension and release. Water moves slowly through them. Insects pass in bursts of vibration. A snake coils nearby, its body registering as a smooth certainty rather than a threat. For a moment, the fear of darkness flares sharply. Seeing without light remains unbearable. Every movement is too close, too immediate. You want to recoil from it, to shut your eyes and return to the smaller, safer blindness of being human. You do not. You remember what it felt like the first time, how terror and belonging arrived together. You allow both. The shape holds longer now, not because you force it, but because you stop resisting the parts of it that frighten you most. You feel the slow patience of the forest, the way it does not rush to distinguish between danger and familiarity. When the state loosens its grip, you collapse forward, catching yourself on your hands. Your breath comes in shallow gasps. Your heart resumes a more familiar rhythm, though it feels louder now, insistent. The shaman watches you closely. You are learning to remain, he says. This is more important than seeing. You want to ask him what remains when you are gone. The thought surprises you. You let it go. Over the next days, the training intensifies in small, incremental ways that are easy to miss if you are not looking for them. He lengthens the fasts. He shortens the explanations. He sends you alone into places where the forest closes in tightly, where light barely reaches even at midday. He asks you to sit there without preparation, without substance, and wait for the body to remember what it has learned. It does, reluctantly. Your fear of the dark does not diminish. If anything, it sharpens. You notice now how much you have relied on light as a boundary. Without it, perception floods in uncontrolled. The animal way of seeing does not soften this. It intensifies it. And yet, under influence, when perception shifts and the forest accepts you into its own rhythms, the terror loses its urgency. It becomes background, a condition rather than a command. You begin to understand that fear is not the opposite of control. It is often the means by which control is tested. The village grows quieter. People speak less openly. Children are kept close. Fires are watched carefully. The story of the upriver place circulates again, with new details added each time. The ground there was not only sacred, they say, but old, older than memory. The outsiders did not know, or knew and did not care. You notice how the story absolves everyone who tells it. The violence becomes necessary. The fear becomes justified. One evening, under the influence of a vine brew, you feel the distant disturbance again. It is clearer this time, a pressure that does not belong to your immediate surroundings. It feels like a bruise pressed too often. You sense anger there, but not the kind that seeks resolution. It is contained, circling. You mention this to the shaman carefully. He listens. He does not correct you. He does not elaborate. Some consequences travel, he says finally, not as spirits, as imbalance. This is the first time he has spoken this way. The next day, the elders report smoke seen far off upriver. Too thin to mean a camp, too deliberate to mean lightning. The word outsider is not spoken aloud, but it shapes the conversation anyway. Fear tightens its grip. That night the shaman gives you nothing. He sends you to the edge of the clearing again, deeper this time, where the trees press close and the path narrows into suggestion. You sit. Darkness closes around you. Your breath shortens. Your heart responds. You do not fight. Slowly, the other way of seeing arrives, without substance to invite it. It is weaker, less complete, but present enough to orient you. You feel the forest rather than see it. Movement registers. Distance becomes relational rather than measured. You are terrified. You are steady. When you return before dawn, exhausted and shaking, the shaman studies you for a long time. The boundary is forming, he says. It will need weight. You do not ask whose. Later, alone, you realize that he has begun to speak as if your endurance is already required for something beyond training. This thought settles heavily in you. Outside, the forest remains unchanged in its density and indifference. Somewhere beyond it, fear continues to move, carried not by spirits alone, but by stories, by memory, by the certainty that something once disturbed does not always return to rest. You feel this not as dread, but as pressure, and you continue to learn how to hold it. Chapter 6. What must not be seen. You begin to understand that secrecy has a texture. It is not silence exactly. It is a careful distribution of attention. You learn where to stand so that no one notices you standing there. You learn when to leave before being dismissed. You learn how to carry fatigue in a way that resembles obedience rather than strain. This is harder than the training itself. The elders grow more present. They sit longer in council. They watch the edges of the clearing with renewed interest. The word impurity circulates more freely now, applied to food, to behavior, to moods. Someone suggests that fear itself might be contagious. This idea is rejected, then quietly adopted anyway. You notice how often eyes pass over you and do not stop. This used to feel like absence. Now it feels like protection. The shaman does not call you for 3 nights. This is deliberate. You know this because he tells you nothing, and because nothing in his practice is accidental. The waiting unsettles you more than the ordeals have. Your body, accustomed now to cycles of deprivation and alteration, reacts poorly to the interruption. Sleep comes unevenly. Your breath remains shallow even at rest. Your heart seems unwilling to commit to a steady rhythm. On the second night, you wake convinced that you are being watched. The fear is immediate and sharp. You lie still in your hammock, listening. The maloka breathes. Someone snores. A child shifts. Nothing is wrong. This does not reassure you. Darkness presses close. You remind yourself that jaguars do not enter houses. This is true. It has always been true. Your fear does not respond to it. You find yourself longing for the altered state, not for the visions, but for the way fear becomes usable there, stripped of its insistence. You dislike this realization. You keep it to yourself. On the third day, The elders announce a purification ritual. This is unusual. Purification implies fault. No fault has been named. The lack of a target creates unease. People begin adjusting their behavior preemptively, avoiding one another, correcting children more sharply than necessary. You feel the net tightening. That evening, the shaman calls you quietly, just as the light begins to thin. You must not be seen, he says. He leads you not to his hut, but beyond it, into a narrow path that curves away from the clearing. The forest closes quickly here. Light fades. Roots crown the ground. The air feels heavier, as if it has been stored. He prepares nothing elaborate. The substance he gives you is familiar now. A thin brew from vine and leaf, bitter and sharp. You drink without comment. The effects arrive quickly. Heat rises. Your breath shortens. Your heart slows, then stutters, then finds its rhythm again. Nausea curls and recedes. Sweat breaks out along your spine. Fear arrives on schedule. Hold, he says, and steps back. This time the shift is deeper, faster. The forest opens not gradually, but as if you have stepped across a line. Darkness does not obscure, it reveals. Every movement registers, distance collapses. You are low again, oriented forward, alert. You feel the edge of the clearing, not as a boundary, but as a thinning of density. Beyond it, the village hums faintly. Closer, the forest presses in, layered and intent. You sense movement, not animal, human. Your fear spikes sharply, threatening to break the shape. You steady yourself, focusing on the slow patience beneath the ground. Roots, water, the long endurance of wood. Figures move at the edge of the clearing. Elder men, their steps deliberate, their voices low. They are conducting the ritual already, earlier than announced. Smoke rises. Chants begin uneven and searching. The shaman stands among them. This disorients you. You sense him clearly, his presence steady and contained, his attention divided. He does not look toward you. You realize with a jolt that he has placed you here deliberately, not hidden, but positioned. A test. The elders speak of impurity, of unseen influence, of the need to drive it out. Their words are precise, but their fear leaks through the structure. They are reacting, not directing. One of them suggests that the spirits have chosen a vessel. Another counters that a vessel must be identified before it can be cleansed. The ritual falters, reconfigures itself. You feel the confusion ripple outward. Your heart slows further. The altered state deepens. perception sharpens until it becomes almost painful. You see the way fear moves through the group, the way certainty is performed rather than felt. You also see the mechanism. The shaman produces a sound, low, resonant, rising and falling in a pattern that seems to come from everywhere at once. It roars through the clearing like a presence. The elders stiffen. Someone gasps. The sound carries authority. You recognize it, not as a spirit, but as a tool. The realization lands quietly, without drama. The sound is familiar not because you have heard it before, but because your body recognizes the pattern of its effect. It induces fear, then organizes it. It gives shape to what is already present. Your stomach tightens. Heat surges again. You struggle to hold the shape as something shifts inside you. Not the vision, but your understanding of it. The elders fall into silence. The ritual regains momentum. The sound ceases. Relief spreads, mingled with awe. The shaman speaks then, naming no one, accusing no one. He declares the impurity contained, for now. The elders accept this readily. They prefer containment to clarity. When the ritual ends, the clearing empties quickly. People retreat to the safety of the maloka. Fear settles back into its assigned places. You remain where you are until the shaman comes for you. When he does, he studies your face carefully. "You saw," he says. "Yes," you reply. The word feels heavy. "Did you follow?" he asks. "No." He nods. "Good." He does not ask what you understood. Later, when the effects fade and your body returns to itself in stages, breath deepening, heart steadying, nausea loosening its grip, you feel a new kind of fatigue settle in. It is not physical. It sits lower, heavier. You have learned something you were not meant to learn yet. That night you sleep poorly. The dark presses close. Your fear returns in its old shape, less manageable, more insistent. You miss the altered vision, the way it made darkness legible. In the morning, the village resumes its routines with visible relief. The ritual has worked. Order has been restored. This is agreed upon without discussion. The shaman does not speak to you all day. In the afternoon, news arrives from the river. Marks on the bank again, this time clearer. Something made of metal dropped and left. A shape that does not belong. The elders react swiftly. Fear snaps back into place. Chapter 7. When fear learns to speak. After the metal is found, the village changes its posture. It is not dramatic. No one runs, no one one shouts. The response is quieter than that and more complete. People stop wandering, tasks shorten, conversations narrow to what is necessary, and then end. Children are corrected before they misstep. Fires are kept low, then lowered further. Fear has found a voice that everyone recognizes. The object itself is small, a curved edge, dull with age, shaped by intention rather than hand. It is passed between the elders carefully, as if it might still carry heat. No one touches it directly. Someone wraps it in leaves that are immediately declared unsuitable and replaced. You do not go near it. This is not asked of you. You have learned to understand what is being asked without words. The shaman says very little. When he does speak, it is to remind the elders of procedures, not stories, procedures. Which paths must be watched, which days require restraint, which sounds must be answered and which must be ignored. His authority settles the discussion. Fear relaxes slightly, like a muscle released after cramping. That night, the forest feels closer than usual. You lie awake in the maloka, staring into the dark above you. Smoke clings low beneath the roof. Someone nearby mutters in their sleep. Outside, insects hum with relentless precision. You dislike this darkness. You always have. It feels uncontained, leaking past the edges of your sight. You resist the urge to count your breaths. Counting makes the fear sharper, more aware of itself. You wonder, briefly, whether the animal way of seeing would make this easier. The thought disturbs you. Before dawn, the shaman calls you. This time there is no ceremony, no careful arrangement. He gives you a small pinch of dried powder, crushed seed mixed with ash, and tells you to place it beneath your tongue. You obey. The effect is slower than before, but no less thorough. Your mouth numbs, saliva thickens. Heat builds gradually in your chest. Your breath shortens, becomes deliberate. Your heart slows, each beat heavy and pronounced. You sit where he places you, just beyond the edge of the clearing, where the forest begins to reclaim the path. Listen, he says. At first, you hear nothing new. The same layered sounds, the same restless movement. Then, slowly, another pattern emerges. Not a sound exactly, but a tension, a subtle wrongness, like a knot pulled too tight. You follow it cautiously. The altered vision arrives without the usual violence. Darkness opens rather than presses. You feel low again, oriented forward, aware of the ground as something communicative. The fear is there, immediate and sharp, but it does not overwhelm you. You sense movement upriver, not close, not immediate, human but distant. A memory rather than a presence. You feel the pressure you have sensed before, the bruise that does not heal. It is clearer now. It carries fear with it, but not the kind you are used to. This fear is jagged, panicked, uncontained. It does not belong to the village. You pull back instinctively. Stay, the shaman says. You do. The shape holds. In the distance, you sense something else layered over the fear. A residue. Violence that has not settled. Ground that remembers being stepped on without permission. Bodies that were taken not for hunger, but for closure. You do not see the act, you feel its consequence. When the state fades, your body reacts strongly. Nausea rises and does not recede quickly. Your limbs tremble. Your breath stutters before finding rhythm again. You lean forward, retching once, twice. The shaman waits without comment. Is it spirits? You ask finally. The question escapes before you can stop it. He considers you for a long moment. It does not matter, he says. This answer does not satisfy you. You note this quietly. Over the next days, the village exists in a state of heightened readiness. Men take turns watching paths that have not been used in years. Women keep children close. The elders revise their instructions repeatedly, refining them into something that feels almost efficient. Fear has become practiced. Your training continues, but it shifts in tone. The shaman speaks less about endurance and more about direction. He asks you to enter the altered state and remain oriented toward specific things. A sound, a movement, the slow pulse of water beneath roots. Under the influence, you begin to notice that attention itself has weight. When you focus on something steadily enough, it responds, not dramatically, but subtly. An animal pauses longer than expected. A snake shifts its path. Roots seem to loosen beneath your feet. You do not know whether you are causing this or merely aligning with what is already happening. The distinction feels increasingly unimportant. Your fear of the dark remains unchanged. If anything, it grows more precise. You know now exactly what unsettles you, not what hides in the darkness, but how much can be perceived there when sight is no longer a barrier. And yet, under the altered vision, you move through it with a steadiness that surprises you each time. One evening, as the sun thins and the forest prepares itself for night, the shaman watches you carefully. You are learning quickly, he says. This is the closest he has come to praise. The words do not comfort you. Later, alone, you sit at the edge of the clearing and listen to the forest speak in its many overlapping voices. You think of the distant place upriver, of the violated ground, of the fear that radiated outward from it like smoke. You think of the object found on the bank, shaped by hands that did not belong here. For the first time, you consider the possibility that what threatens the village is not a spirit at all, but a consequence, moving through story and belief because that is how it can be carried. This thought is unsettling. You do not share it. That night, you dream again. In the dream, you are low to the ground, seeing without light. The forest opens around you, dense and immediate. You are afraid, but the fear does not stop you. It moves with you, sharp and clean. Ahead, the boundary holds, thin, strained, but intact. You wake before dawn, your heart slow and steady, your breath shallow but controlled. Outside, the forest waits, and somewhere beyond it, something that should have remained contained continues to press, testing the shape of the fear that now speaks for the village, and the shape you are learning, whether you wish to or not, to hold. Chapter 8. The Shape That Listens Back. The shaman waits longer than usual before calling you again. You notice the delay because your body notices it first. Hunger sharpens more quickly. Sleep grows thin and shallow, breaking apart into fragments that do not add up to rest. Your breath remains careful even when you are not thinking about it, as if it has learned caution and refuses to abandon it. The village moves as though suspended. Nothing new happens, and this is treated as meaningful. When nothing happens for long enough, people begin to speak of it as if it were an achievement. The elders say the measures are working. You say nothing. When the shaman finally calls you, it is late, well after dark. There is no fire waiting, no careful arrangement of objects. He leads you beyond the familiar paths, into a section of forest where the ground dips and the canopy closes so tightly that even the stars are erased. This alone tightens something in your chest. You have always feared the dark most when it is complete. Partial darkness offers reference points. Complete darkness removes negotiation. He stops where the path disappears entirely. You will not sit, he says. You will move. The instruction unsettles you more than the ordeals that came before. Movement implies choice. Choice implies error. He gives you a small amount of a dried preparation, crushed vine bark mixed with something bitter and resinous. You chew it slowly, as instructed. The effects arrive unevenly. First heat, then a creeping cold along your arms. Your breath shortens. Your heart slows and then feels suddenly too loud, each beat echoing inside you. Nausea rises and recedes without resolution, leaving your stomach clenched and uncertain. Fear arrives early this time, sharp and insistent. You stand where he leaves you and wait for the shift. When it comes, it does not open outward. It pulls inward. The forest does not reveal itself all at once. Instead, your awareness narrows and deepens, like water drawn down through a channel. You feel low again, but now you are also moving. Each step is deliberate, registered fully. The ground communicates texture and intention. Roots announce themselves before you touch them. Darkness presses close. You see without light, and the seeing is immediate and overwhelming. Every movement matters. Every sound arrives with meaning. You are terrified. You are also precise. The shaman's presence is distant now, barely a pressure at the edge of your awareness. He does not guide you. This is intentional. You move through the forest slowly, carefully, guided by a sense that is not sight and not memory. The fear does not diminish. It sharpens, but it no longer scatters you. It gathers you inward, holds you together. You sense an animal nearby. Something small, alert, watching you watch it. The recognition is mutual. Neither of you moves. For a moment, you feel the animal's orientation as if it were your own. Forward, taut, undecided. Then it darts away. The moment leaves you shaking. Further on, the forest shifts. The ground feels disturbed here, compacted in a way that does not belong. The altered vision registers it immediately. This place remembers weight, not animal weight, human. The fear changes shape. You feel the distant disturbance more clearly than ever before. It is not here, not now, but its echo is strong enough to press against you. Violence has passed through this region and not settled. The forest has adjusted around it, but it has not absorbed it. You stop without meaning to. The shape you hold strains. Fear surges sharply, threatening to collapse your control. You focus on the slow, deep presence beneath you, the patience of roots, the long memory of soil. Gradually, you stabilize. In that stillness, something responds. Not a figure, not a voice. A pressure that meets your attention and does not withdraw. It feels like being looked at from very far away. You do not follow it. You do not retreat. You stay. The contact does not deepen, but it does not break either. It remains neutral and intent, as if assessing whether you will hold. Your heart slows further. For a moment, you worry it may slow too much. The thought floats through you without panic. You breathe deliberately, shallow and steady. Eventually, the pressure eases. The forest resumes its usual density. The altered vision loosens its grip. When you return fully to yourself, your legs tremble violently. You sink to the ground, unable to remain standing. Sweat cools rapidly on your skin. Your stomach tightens again, and you retch once, then sit hunched and breathing carefully. The shaman appears beside you without warning. You did not flee, he says. No, you manage. You did not follow. No. This seems to satisfy him. As you make your way back toward the clearing, supported more by habit than strength, you realize something has shifted. The fear is still there. It remains sharp, precise, undeniable. But it no longer feels entirely your own. That night, you do not dream. The absence of dreams feels heavier than their presence ever did. In the days that follow, the shaman begins to speak of control more explicitly, not of spirits, but of attention. He teaches you how to enter the altered state and remain oriented toward a single thing without being pulled apart by everything else that presents itself. Under the influence, you practice this. You focus on a sound until it sharpens and then fades. You attend to a root until its presence becomes almost intimate. You hold the shape and listen for what listens back. Your fear of darkness remains unchanged in ordinary life. You still avoid unlit spaces when you can. You still feel the old tightening when the light thins too quickly. Under the altered vision, however, darkness becomes information rather than threat. This contradiction sits uneasily with you. One evening, word arrives that a scouting party has not returned. The elders respond immediately. Instructions are issued. Fires are adjusted. Fear resumes its work with practiced efficiency. The shaman watches you as the news spreads. You are close now, he says quietly. To what? You ask before you can stop yourself. He does not answer. That night, as you sit at the edge of the clearing and feel the forest breathe around you, you understand that whatever is pressing against the village boundary is no longer distant. It is listening. And you are learning, whether you wish to or not, how to listen back without losing your shape. Chapter 9. The Fear That Decides. The men do not return. This fact settles into the village slowly, like damp into wood. At first it is treated as delay, then as complication. Only later does it become absence. By the time anyone names it, the name fits too well to be argued with. The elders meet again. Their voices stay low. Their words repeat. Procedures are recalled, amended, recalled again. The rules for loss are clear, but the rules for uncertainty are not. And so uncertainty is spoken around rather than addressed. You sit where you are expected to sit. You keep your eyes lowered. You listen. The shaman speaks last. He says the boundary has been tested. He says it has held, but only narrowly. He says attention must be maintained. Fear tightens into obedience. A new set of restrictions is announced. Paths are closed. Certain names are forbidden for a time that is not specified. The hours of darkness are reclassified as unsafe earlier than before. Someone asks whether this contradicts the previous rule. The contradiction is acknowledged and absorbed without resolution. You notice how easily people accept this. That night, the shaman calls you without ceremony. He does not take you far. Just beyond the clearing where the forest begins to thicken, but the maloka can still be sensed behind you, like a held breath. He gives you a preparation you have not taken before. A thin paste mixed from crushed seeds and a resin that smells sharp and almost sweet. He applies it carefully to a small cut on your skin, then binds it with leaf and fiber. The effect is swift and invasive. Heat surges through you, not blooming, but flooding. Your breath shortens abruptly. Your heart slows until each beat feels isolated, as if it must travel farther than before to reach you. Nausea rises hard and fast. Your vision narrows. You grip the ground instinctively, feeling the soil press back. Hold, he says, close now, and listen. The altered state takes you deeper than before. There is no gradual shift. Perception collapses inward and then expands sharply outward. Darkness becomes total and absolute, and then immediately intelligible. You are low. You are oriented forward. You are aware of movement at the edge of awareness and of stillness beneath it. The forest does not open so much as reorganize around you. Fear spikes violently. You feel exposed in a way that has nothing to do with vulnerability. Everything is too near. Every movement registers with equal urgency. You want to recoil from the intensity of it, to retreat into the smaller, safer blindness of ordinary sight. You do not. You stay with the shape, letting fear burn without scattering you. The heat in your body becomes a steady pressure. Your breath remains shallow but controlled. Your heart's slow rhythm anchors you. Something moves through the forest. Not animal. Not spirit in the way you have learned to recognize them. Human, but altered by panic. A scattering presence, uneven and loud in its fear. You follow it briefly, not in movement, but in attention. You see flashes, not images, but impressions. Men running, breath ragged, ground unfamiliar. A sudden violence that does not belong to the forest's rhythms. The pressure you have felt before flares sharply, like a wound pressed again. You pull back instinctively. Stay, the shaman says. You do, but the shape strains. Fear surges again, this time threaded with anger, not yours, carried. The realization arrives quietly, without triumph or relief. Whatever has been disturbing the village is not choosing targets. It is echoing. Fear has moved through people elsewhere and is now moving through belief here. The altered vision wavers. You feel your heart slow further. For a moment, you are not certain it will recover. The shaman's hand closes around your wrist, grounding and firm. His presence steadies the shape. When the state releases you, it does so abruptly. Sensation returns in a rush. Heat recedes. Your breath stutters and then deepens. Nausea crests and finally breaks, leaving you shaking and hollowed. You sit hunched, breathing carefully, your palms pressed into the earth. The shaman watches you closely. You followed, he says. Yes, you reply. The word feels wrong in your mouth. You returned, he adds. Yes. This seems to matter more. In the days that follow, the village reacts as if a decision has been made, though no one can say by whom. The restrictions remain in place. The elders speak with renewed certainty. The absence of the men is folded into the story of the boundary being tested and held. Fear becomes quieter, more focused. Your training changes again. The shaman no longer emphasizes endurance. He emphasizes restraint. He teaches you how to enter the altered state and hold your attention steady without chasing what presents itself. He teaches you how to withdraw deliberately without panic. Under the influence, you practice this. You feel the pull of movement and resist it. You sense disturbance and do not follow. You learn that control is not the same as power. Your fear of darkness persists in ordinary life. You still dislike the way it erases edges. You still feel the old tightening when the light fails. Under the altered vision, however, darkness has become something else entirely. Not absence, but density, full of information. You move through it with a steadiness that would have surprised you not long ago. One evening, you overhear an elder say that the shaman has grown too severe. Another counters that severity is what keeps them alive. The conversation ends without resolution. Later, alone, you consider this quietly. You think of the frog medicine, the vine brews, the hunger and stillness. You think of how fear has been shaped and reshaped until it fits neatly into instruction. You do not yet think of this as manipulation, but the thought has begun to form. That night, you dream again. In the dream, you stand at the boundary, low and alert, seeing without light. Fear moves toward you, carried by voices and stories, by memory and belief. You do not fight it. You do not flee it. You let it stop where you stand. When you wake, your breath is shallow but steady. Your heart beats slow and sure. Outside, the forest holds its shape, and you sense with growing clarity that whatever comes next will require more than endurance. It will require choice. Chapter 10. The sound that should not travel. The ritual is announced at midday. This alone is enough to unsettle people. Rituals meant to confront danger are usually prepared slowly, eased into through restriction and silence. This one arrives fully formed, as if it has been waiting and simply decided to surface. The elders say the boundary has thinned. They say it must be reinforced. They say the absence of the men requires answer, not mourning. The words are careful, rehearsed. They carry the weight of necessity rather than grief. You listen from the edge of the gathering, hands busy, eyes lowered. No one looks toward you. This is not an oversight. It is arrangement. The shaman does not contradict the elders. He does not embellish. He confirms procedures. He assigns roles. He speaks of timing, of sequence, of what must happen before something else is allowed to happen. Fear settles into the structure easily. By late afternoon, the clearing has been prepared. Fires are placed with precision. Objects are arranged according to rules that no one remembers learning, but everyone agrees are correct. The air feels tight, expectant. You are not summoned. This omission feels deliberate, and it unsettles you more than inclusion would have. Your body reacts before your thoughts catch up. Your breath shortens. Your heart slows slightly, then steadies. When dusk comes, the ritual begins without announcement. Chants rise, uneven at first, then a line. Smoke thickens. Shadows stretch and distort. The elders move with practiced gravity, their faces arranged into seriousness that leaves no room for doubt. You remain at the edge of the clearing, where you have been positioned more often than not. You feel the boundary here, not as a line, but as a tension, stretched and held. The shaman steps forward. He wears no mask. He carries no obvious instrument. This absence feels intentional, almost instructive. His presence alone draws focus. The chanting shifts to accommodate him. He raises his hands. The sound comes. It is low at first, almost indistinct, a vibration rather than a noise. Then it rises, resonant and broad, filling the clearing without appearing to come from anywhere specific. It rolls through the space, pressing against the chest, unsettling breath. The effect is immediate. People stiffen. Some bow their heads. Others grip the ground instinctively. Fear surges, sharp and collective. then organizes itself into awe. You feel it too, the sound moving through you, bypassing thought and going straight to the body. Your breath shortens reflexively. Your heart slows, then steadies. And beneath the fear, recognition stirs. Not because you know how the sound is made, but because you know what it does. The chanting falters, then resumes with renewed intensity. The sound rises again, louder this time, rolling outward toward the forest. It feels as if it is being sent, not summoned. The shaman's posture tightens. His breath changes. You notice this because you have learned how to notice such things. His chest moves shallowly. His shoulders tense. The sound rises a third time. Something shifts. It is subtle at first, a hesitation, a strain. The sound wavers slightly, as if catching on something unseen. The air feels thicker, resistant. The shaman sways. For a moment, no one reacts. The ritual has no instruction for interruption. Fear has been carefully shaped to move in only one direction. The sound breaks. The shaman collapses forward, his hands striking the ground with a dull finality that carries farther than any chant. The clearing falls into sudden, complete silence. Panic threatens to scatter. An elder shouts an instruction, not meaningful but loud enough to impose order. People freeze. Someone begins to cry and is silenced immediately. You move before deciding to. Your body recognizes the moment as it has learned to recognize thresholds. You step forward, crossing the invisible line that has kept you peripheral. No one stops you. This too is telling. You kneel beside the shaman. His skin is hot, too hot. His breath comes shallow and uneven. His heart beats slowly, irregularly, as if struggling to remember its pattern. You place your hand on his chest without asking permission. The sensation is immediate and intimate. Heat, strain, a body pushed beyond its intended boundary. You feel the altered state hovering close, ready to open if invited. You do not invite it. Instead, you breathe deliberately, shallow and steady, matching his rhythm as closely as you can. You focus on containment rather than expansion, on holding rather than sending. The elders watch, uncertain. This was not planned. The shaman's eyes open briefly. They find yours. There is no surprise in them, only calculation, softened by something else you cannot name. The sound does not return. After a long moment, his breathing steadies slightly. Not enough, not well, but enough to keep him present. The elders declare the ritual complete. This is not entirely true, but it is necessary. The clearing empties quickly, people retreating toward the Maloka with relief that borders on gratitude. Fear loosens its grip and settles back into its assigned places. You remain with the shaman until you are told to move him. Later, in his hut, the air thick with smoke and residue, you sit beside him as night deepens. His breathing remains shallow. His heart struggles to find consistency. The effort of the ritual has taken something from him that does not appear inclined to return. He speaks once, very quietly. "It holds," he says. You do not ask what. Outside, the forest listens. The sound that should not travel has already done so. And you understand, with a clarity that feels cold and exact, that the boundary has been reinforced not by the ritual itself, but by what it has cost, by who has paid. You sit with this knowledge as the night settles fully around the hut, the darkness pressing close, no longer merely frightening, but weighted with consequence. The turning has begun, whether anyone is ready to name it or not. Chapter 11. What was making the sound? The shaman does not wake. At first, this is treated as rest, then as recovery. Only later does it become something that requires different words. His breathing remains shallow and uneven through the night. His skin stays hot. Sweat beads and dries without relief. You sit beside him and listen to the rhythm fail to settle. You know this rhythm now. You have learned to recognize when the body is opening and when it is closing. This is neither. Near dawn, his eyes open again. They move once, unfocused, then find you. "You held," he says. His voice is barely present, as if it has already stepped some distance away. "I stayed," you reply. This seems to satisfy him. He does not speak again. When the light returns, it comes reluctantly. Smoke hangs low in the Maloka. The village wakes cautiously, as if unsure whether it is permitted to resume itself. News spreads without announcement. People pass the hut quietly. No one enters unless instructed. The elders gather. They do not argue about what has happened. The ritual has worked. This is the agreed conclusion. The boundary held. The disturbance has been addressed. The cost, though regrettable, is acceptable. You hear this from where you sit. The shaman's breathing grows slower as the day wears on. Each breath seems to require negotiation. You place your hand on his chest again, feeling the irregular beat beneath it. Heat radiates through your palm. Your breath responds instinctively, shortening to match his. This time, when the altered state brushes against you, you do not resist it. You do not deepen it either. You hold the threshold. The sensation is different now. Less opening, more pressure. The forest does not reveal itself. Instead, awareness turns inward, attentive to the precise mechanics of failure. The slowing heart, the shallow breath, the strain of having pushed something too far, too often. You realize quietly that this is not an attack. It is depletion. The understanding arrives without drama. The shaman has been holding the boundary for a long time. He has been shaping fear and sending it outward, containing it, redirecting it, absorbing the excess. The ritual was not a confrontation. It was a final extension. When his breathing stops, it does so without ceremony. There is no sound, no visible shift. The body simply fails to continue. You remain where you are, hand on his chest, for a long moment after it is over. You do not call out. You do not need to. The absence announces itself. Later, after the elders have come and gone, and the body has been prepared according to custom, you return to the hut alone. This is not forbidden. It is simply unexpected. You do not know what you are looking for. The thought that you are not supposed to be here occurs to you only in passing. The hut smells of smoke and old preparations. Objects lie where they were left. Bowls, leaves, bindings. Nothing looks out of place. You move slowly, deliberately. Near the back of the hut, partially concealed by hanging bundles of dried plant matter, you find the instrument. It is simple, wood shaped carefully, bound with fiber, worn smooth by use. You recognize it immediately, not by sight, but by memory of sensation. The sound it produces lives already in your body. You lift it. The weight is unremarkable. The shape is unassuming. There is nothing about it that suggests power on its own. You understand then, with a clarity that feels almost gentle, that the sound was never a voice. It was a tool. You sit back on your heels, the instrument resting across your palms, and allow the realization to settle fully. The fear it induced, the way it organized attention, the way it filled uncertainty with direction, the way it gave shape to what people already believed. You think back through the rituals you have witnessed, the moments of awe, the collective stillness, the relief that followed. You do not feel anger. You feel something heavier. The shaman did not invent the fear. He did not need to. He learned how to call it forward and give it form. He learned how to send it outward so it would not tear inward. And you were being trained not only to see, but to replace him. The understanding settles fully now, rearranging everything that came before without requiring explanation. The hunger, the fear, the endurance, the way he placed you where you could observe without being seen. You were never meant to be revealed. You were meant to hold. A sound reaches you from outside. Raised voices, then quiet. The elders are deciding what happens next. They will need continuity. They will need assurance. They will need something that sounds like certainty. You place the instrument back where you found it, not because you reject it, because you understand it. That night, you sit at the edge of the clearing, as you have so many times before. The darkness presses close. Your fear responds as it always has, sharp, precise, immediate. You do not alter your vision. You sit with the fear as it is. From this place, you sense the forest differently now, not as a field of spirits waiting to be named, but as a system of consequences, patient, layered, indifferent to intention. The disturbance you have felt for so long remains, but it has changed. It no longer presses outward blindly. It settles, contained by story, by belief, by the fact that something has been given in exchange. The boundary holds, not because it was defended by spirits, because someone stood in the way. You understand now that the shaman did not protect you from being used. He prepared you to understand what it means to be offered. And as the night deepens and the forest resumes its endless, layered attention, you realize that whatever comes next will require you to decide what kind of boundary you are willing to become, not whether you will be one. That question has already been answered. Chapter 12. Inheritance without ceremony. The elders do not announce the shaman's death. They behave as if announcing it might change something or invite response. Instead, they allow the knowledge to spread the way heat does, unevenly, through proximity. People lower their voices as they pass the hut. Children are redirected without explanation. The Maloka breathes more carefully. You are not summoned. This omission is deliberate. You understand it immediately. To summon you would be to acknowledge a shape that has not been agreed upon. The body is prepared according to custom. Songs are sung that have been sung before. Objects are placed that have always been placed. Nothing in the procedure allows for uncertainty. The dead are one of the few things the village knows how to handle without argument. You assist where expected. You fetch water. You tend fires. You keep your face arranged correctly. Grief remains distant, held behind a layer of attention that does not permit it to surface yet. When the body is carried away, the forest accepts it without comment. Afterward, the elders gather again. This time their voices do not carry certainty. They speak of continuity, of protection, of the need for vigilance. They speak of the shaman's work as complete, his sacrifice sufficient. They do not speak of replacement. You sit where you have always sat, slightly apart, close enough to hear, but not close enough to be included. Your hands rest loosely in your lap. Your breath is shallow but steady. Your heart beats at a measured pace you recognize as readiness. The elders decide that rituals will continue as scheduled, that restrictions will remain in place, that fear, properly managed, will not be allowed to wander. Someone asks who will manage the details. The question hangs longer than most. Finally, one of the elders says that the details are known, that the procedures have been established, that nothing new is required. This satisfies no one completely, which is taken as proof of its wisdom. That night, you are not called to the shaman's hut. Instead, you sit at the edge of the clearing alone. The darkness presses close. Your fear responds immediately, sharp and intimate. You allow it. You have learned that resisting it only gives it more shape. You do not enter the altered vision. You sit with ordinary sight, limited and incomplete, and let the forest remain largely unreadable. This is more difficult now than it once was. Knowing how much you are not seeing feels heavier than ignorance ever did. Still, you stay. In the days that follow, small adjustments occur. An elder begins to ask you questions without looking at you. Practical questions, procedural ones. You answer carefully, keeping your voice level, your responses incomplete. You do not volunteer interpretation. You do not name spirits. People begin to sit closer to you without appearing to notice they are doing so. No one speaks of it. The object found on the riverbank is buried in a place agreed upon, quickly and without debate. This, too, is taken as a sign that the danger has passed. Smoke is no longer seen upriver. The forest resumes its usual indifference. The absence of threat feels unfamiliar. You continue your training alone. You take the vine brews rarely now. When you do, you prepare them yourself, following memory rather than instruction. You monitor your body carefully, the slowing heart, the shallow breath, the rise of heat and nausea. You stop before the edge becomes dangerous. Under the altered vision, the forest responds as it always has. Animals pause, roots shift, darkness opens into information. You do not seek contact with whatever disturbance once pressed so insistently against the boundary. You sense that it has settled, not resolved but contained, folded into story and exchange. One evening, a child wanders too far from the clearing. This would once have caused immediate alarm. Instead, someone looks to you. The look is brief, almost accidental. You stand without comment and walk into the forest. Darkness closes around you. Fear rises sharp and clean. You do not alter your vision. You move carefully, listening. You find the child sitting beside a tree, unhurt, watching insects move across bark. You lead them back without speaking. No one remarks on this afterward. Later that night, an elder brings you food you did not ask for. This is not generosity. It is recognition. You accept it without comment. The shaman's hut remains unused. Objects gather dust. No one enters it except you, occasionally, to ensure nothing rots or draws insects. The instrument remains where you left it. You think of it often, not as a temptation, as a reminder. Fear can be shaped. It can be sent outward. It can be used to bind people together or hold them in place. You understand now why the shaman chose the methods he did, why he withheld explanation, why he pushed his body until it failed. Understanding does not make the weight lighter. It makes it clearer. As the nights pass and the forest resumes its endless, layered attention, you settle into a role that has not been named, but is increasingly assumed. You are not a leader. You are not a shaman. You are something less visible. A point of attention. A place where fear stops moving outward and begins to slow. The boundary holds, not because it is enforced, because you are present. And you know, with a certainty that does not require reassurance, that this inheritance has no ceremony, because ceremony would invite scrutiny. Some things must remain unspoken in order to function. You are learning how to live inside that silence. Chapter 13. The Measure of Holding. The elders begin to consult you without admitting that they are doing so. It happens in the small pauses between statements, in the way a question is allowed to hover and then drift in your direction without being aimed. You answer only what is asked. You do not correct phrasing. You do not offer interpretation unless silence would create more movement than speech. This restraint is noticed. Fear has thinned, but it has not left. It has learned new habits. It waits now, patient, listening for cues. You learn to recognize the moments when it begins to gather again. A rumor repeated too carefully. A sound misheard and retold. A rule invoked too early. When that happens, you do very little. Sometimes you adjust a fire. Sometimes you suggest waiting until morning. Sometimes you say nothing at all and allow an elder to finish the thought they were already committed to. These interventions are small and procedural. They are effective. The village settles into a quieter vigilance. You still work. You still carry water and tend roots and keep children from stepping where they should not. Nothing in your posture suggests authority. This is intentional. Authority would invite expectation. expectation would invite disappointment. At night, you sit at the edge of the clearing. You no longer avoid the dark when it comes. Avoidance has become impractical. Instead, you accept its arrival as a condition to be negotiated rather than resisted. Fear responds immediately, sharp and exact, as it always has. You let it remain. You do not enter the altered vision unless there is reason. When you do, it is brief and contained. You prepare the substances carefully. Vine and leaf brewed thin, never concentrated. Seed scraped and mixed sparingly. The frog preparation left untouched, its severity acknowledged and declined. You monitor your body as closely as you once did under the shaman's gaze. Breath shallows, heart slows, heat rises, nausea threatens and recedes. You stop before the edge. This is new. It feels like disobedience and discipline at once. Under the altered vision, you listen. You do not seek animals. You do not reach for roots or water. You attend to the way attention itself moves through the forest, how it gathers around certain places, how it avoids others. You feel the old disturbance only faintly now, like a scar that aches when weather changes. One evening, you sense something unfamiliar at the margin of perception. Not the jagged panic you have learned to recognize as outsider fear. This is quieter, curious, cautious. It moves with deliberation rather than urgency. You withdraw immediately. The next day, smoke is seen again, far off and thin. The elders notice. They exchange looks. Fear stirs, but it does not surge. You are asked, not directly but by the shape of the conversation, whether measures should be taken. You say that smoke travels. You say that distance matters. You say that fear moves faster than fire. This is accepted. That night, you prepare a small act that looks like nothing. You take the instrument from the shaman's hut and carry it only part way into the forest, stopping well before the place where paths disappear. You do not sound it. You do not even lift it. You place it on the ground and sit nearby. You enter the altered vision briefly. The darkness opens into density. Fear sharpens. You feel low, attentive. You orient your attention outward, not toward the village, but away from it. You do not send the sound. You hold the idea of it. The effect is subtle. Attention shifts. The faint curiosity at the edge of perception hesitates, then redirects. Not in alarm, in uncertainty. When you return fully, your breath deepens with relief you do not indulge. Your heart resumes its familiar rhythm. You retrieve the instrument and return it to its place. No one notices anything. This is the point. In the days that follow, no new signs appear. The smoke does not return. The forest resumes its layered indifference. The elders relax their posture without acknowledging that they are doing so. Fear settles back into habit. You continue to refuse ceremony. When someone suggests that you should take the shaman's place openly, you respond with a practical question about timing. The suggestion dissolves into logistics and is not raised again. You understand now that what you are doing would be impossible if named. Naming would require explanation. Explanation would require certainty. Certainty would invite challenge. You sit at night and let the forest speak in its many overlapping registers. In ordinary sight, darkness still unsettles you. You accept this. You do not seek to cure it. Fear keeps you attentive. Under the altered vision, darkness remains overwhelming and exact. You feel natural there and terrified. The contradiction no longer demands resolution. One evening, you hear a distant sound that is not of the forest. It is low and irregular. It does not belong to insects or birds or water. It comes and goes, faint and mechanical, carried imperfectly through layers of growth and distance. The elders stiffen when it is mentioned. Someone names it as a spirit. Someone else contradicts them and then retracts the contradiction. You listen. You feel no urge to send fear outward. Instead, you wait. The sound does not come closer. It passes, thin and unresolved, leaving behind only the knowledge that the world beyond the forest has not ceased to exist. You accept this without drama. Later, alone, you think of the shaman's final effort, the sound that traveled farther than intended, the body that paid for it. You think of how easy it would be to repeat his methods, how effective they were. You do not do this, not because they were wrong, because you understand their cost. As night settles and the clearing grows quiet again, you take your place at the edge, breathing shallowly, heart steady, fear present but contained. The boundary holds, not because it is reinforced, because it is measured. Chapter 14. What is allowed to pass? The sound returns once more, several nights later. It is fainter than before, more easily mistaken for wind or distant water. This time no one argues about what it is. The elders exchange glances and say nothing. Silence, you have learned, is not the absence of fear. It is fear that has learned restraint. You feel the sound as a disturbance in attention rather than as noise. It does not press, it skirts. It moves along the edges of perception, testing for response. You do not respond. This is not indifference. It is calculation. That night you do not take any substance. You do not fast beyond what is customary. You sit at the edge of the clearing with your ordinary sight, the darkness thick and incomplete around you. Your fear rises immediately, precise and intimate. You feel it in the tightening of your chest, in the way your breath shortens without permission. You stay with it. You let your awareness widen slowly, without altering state. You listen to the forest as it presents itself. Insects in layered argument, leaves brushing against one another. The subtle shifts of small bodies moving through undergrowth. The sound passes again, farther this time. You feel it hesitate, then continue on. In the morning, the elders speak quietly of travelers who pass without stopping, of canoes that move quickly and do not linger, of signs that suggest avoidance rather than pursuit. Someone says the spirits are satisfied. You say nothing. The truth feels less dramatic than that. The forest has learned where attention gathers and where it does not. Fear has been redirected, not outward, but sideways, into caution, into distance, into the choice not to press. This feels like success, though no one names it as such. Daily life resumes more fully now. Gardens are tended without constant supervision. Children are allowed to wander short distances again. Fires are raised slightly at night. The maloca breathes more freely. You remain where you have been, doing what you have been doing. One afternoon, you are asked to decide whether a certain path should be reopened. The question is framed as practical, but the expectation beneath it is clear. You walk the path alone before answering. It winds through dense growth, the canopy closing tightly overhead. Light thins quickly. Darkness gathers even in midday. Your fear responds, immediate and sharp. You note it without comment. You stop where the ground changes, compacted slightly, disturbed in a way that does not belong to animals alone. You crouch and place your hand on the soil. You do not enter the altered vision. You do not need to. The ground tells you enough. You return and say the path can remain closed a little longer. You do not say why. The elders accept this. That night, you sit again at the edge of the clearing. The darkness presses close. You still dislike it. This has not changed. You feel the old tightening in your chest, the urge to pull inward. You remain. Under the altered vision, darkness has always been information. Under ordinary sight, it is limitation. You accept both. As the night deepens, you sense movement at the far edge of awareness. Not fear this time, but curiosity. Something testing, cautious. It does not come closer. You stay still. Eventually, it moves on. Later, lying in your hammock, you consider how much of what once terrified the village has been allowed to pass, simply by not being answered. Fear, when met too directly, grows teeth. When left unremarked, it often loses interest. You think of the shaman again, of his certainty, his severity, the sound that organized belief so efficiently. You understand now that his methods were born of a different necessity, a time when fear had to be louder in order to be heard. This time is quieter. You are quieter. The boundary holds not as a wall, but as a gradient, a tension thinning as it moves outward, interest dissipating where nothing answers it back. This is more difficult to maintain. It requires patience rather than force, endurance rather than spectacle. You fall asleep eventually, your breath shallow but steady, your heart moving at its familiar, measured pace. The forest does not intrude, it does not withdraw. It simply continues, vast and layered, allowing what is allowed to pass. And you, awake or asleep, remain where you are needed, not visible, not named, but present, measuring what moves and what does not. The work is ongoing. You have accepted this. Chapter 15. The Thing That Remains. Some weeks pass without incident. This is not remarked upon. When nothing happens for long enough, it becomes dangerous to notice it. The village resumes its ordinary rhythms, carefully, as if testing the weight of normality before committing to it fully. You move within these rhythms as you always have. You carry water, you tend roots, you listen more than you speak. People speak to you without quite realizing that they are doing so, pausing mid-thought as if waiting for permission that is never explicitly requested. You answer when necessary. You redirect when possible. You leave space where certainty would once have rushed in. Fear has not disappeared. It has settled. It lives now in habit rather than panic, in the way paths are chosen, in the way voices lower at certain hours, in the way the forest edge is approached with respect rather than dread. This is sustainable. You recognize it as such. At night, you still sit at the edge of the clearing. Darkness still troubles you. This too remains. You feel it in the tightening of your chest, in the way your breath shortens without invitation. You no longer expect this to change. Expectation, you have learned, is another form of demand. You sit anyway. Sometimes you enter the altered vision briefly, enough to orient yourself, never enough to lose your edges. Breath shallows, heart slows, heat rises and recedes. The forest opens into density and information, overwhelming and exact. You feel natural there. you are terrified there. Both remain true. More often now, you do nothing at all. You listen with ordinary senses and allow uncertainty to exist without correction. This feels like the most difficult discipline of all. One evening, as the fires burn low and conversation thins, an elder approaches you with a practical problem. A hunting schedule needs adjustment. 2 rules contradict one another. One requires silence. The other requires warning calls. Both have precedent. Neither can be abandoned without consequence. You listen. You suggest that the schedule be changed so that neither rule applies fully. This is unsatisfying. It works. The elder nods, relieved without knowing why. Later, alone, you allow yourself a moment of something like amusement. Not at the people, but at the structure itself. How often survival depends not on correctness, but on the careful avoidance of being entirely correct. This is as close as you come to humor now. That night, lying in your hammock, you hear a sound far away. It is faint, irregular, barely distinguishable from the layered noise of insects and water. It carries a suggestion of rhythm that does not belong to the forest. Once this would have drawn fear sharply forward, summoned story and ritual, and sound sent outward in reply. Now it does not. You listen. You note its distance. You feel how it passes without fixing on the clearing. You allow it to remain unresolved. The sound fades. You do not follow it in attention. Sleep comes slowly. In the hours before dawn, you wake briefly, disoriented by darkness. Fear rises clean and immediate. You breathe shallowly, deliberately, until your heart resumes its familiar pace. For a moment, without altering your vision, you sense the forest as a whole, not as spirits, not as threat, but as continuity, roots pushing slowly through soil, water moving where it has always moved, animals adjusting to absence and presence alike. The disturbance that once pressed so insistently against the boundary has settled into memory. It has not been erased. It has been absorbed. In the morning, light returns in its usual way, filtered and partial. Smoke rises, the maloca exhales. You stand and move into the day without ceremony. The instrument remains in the shaman's hut, untouched. You know where it is. You know what it can do. This knowledge does not trouble you as it once might have. Fear can be shaped. It can also be outgrown. What remains is attention. You have learned how to hold it without forcing it outward, how to let it thin naturally as it moves away from what does not answer it back. This is not peace. It is steadiness. As the day unfolds and ordinary tasks reclaim their place, you feel no urge to name yourself differently. Names invite expectation. Expectation invites repetition. You remain as you are, a presence rather than a position, a boundary rather than a voice. And when night comes again, as it always does, bringing with it the darkness you still dislike and the fear you have learned to live alongside, you take your place at the edge of the clearing. You sit. You listen. The forest does not test you. It does not need to. The thing that remains is not fear, nor power, nor certainty. It is the quiet, practiced knowledge of when to do nothing at all. And that, you understand now, is what holds.